Very good morning, everyone. Charles here, Frgnt Daily Chart Analysis. Tuesday, the 2nd of June, 26, approaching 20 minutes to 10 local time here in Milan. Good morning to you all. The charts are looking, I would say, average, to be honest. I definitely am seeing some good potentials for the day. As always, it does depend on whether the catalyst by way of DXY wants to play ball or not. My most recent analysis was really just to try and continue to stay just linked in with the DXY to understand what is very clear now to see that we are just ranging on that DXY. Bottom right hand chart, you'll see the daily time frame. We certainly, if I can zoom out for you, you can definitely see that the DXY has every ambition to trend like any normal currency pair, although it is just an index, and understanding that the index can trend on the daily time frame and looking at the most recent daily candles, it's very easy to understand that we are now very much so clearly in a daily range. We're just trying to understand whether or not we can seek to manipulate that daily range and use that against our cross pairs. What I mean by that is, of course, if the DXY wants to start trending towards this downside, that would be, in my case, short-lived DXY weakness to potentially fulfill the liquidity within the bottom of the range to then potentially take price higher, which then in my case would be more of a longer term DXY strength coming in the market as we then look to trade up towards the highs of the range. So that's one thought process. Of course, the second thought process being that, well, if I am incorrect, then potentially we have had the breakout out of the range. We've had a 4-hour candle closure to the lows or outside of the range. As I said, we've made the first low in the market, perhaps looking for price to then come back up to create that lower high before a lower low continuation. Then we're looking to see if we can build our bias based on that knowledge. Do we have an order block to support that thought process on the 4-hour time frame as a result of then seeing that break of structure on the 4-hour time frame? Yes, we do. So we have a 4-hour order block as a result of this bearish engulfing candle on Thursday, 28th of May. We're using that order block. Then, as we can see, was that yesterday? Yeah, yesterday we wicked into that 4-hour order block beautifully, also retesting the weekly 50 EMA for the first time in the new week. And of course, the only real other element that I would foresee to be retested would be the wick imbalance for the last week's previous weekly candle high. So with all that said, I do believe we are now in potentially the realms of making a lower low, despite my overall bias really on the DXY. If I take into account fundamentals alongside the technicals, of course, the technicals are suggesting shorts based on that higher time frame weekly order block. But as we're seeing news coming out of the war situation, it's very evident that as the instigators, perhaps that is just my opinion, it is, of course, driving the dollar higher. And then with that said, we can look to seek where that dollar could go. So to those highs, as I zoom out that weekly time frame, I have every inclination to believe that based on the technicals as well to support that as price came down. We've then had a break of structure, in my opinion. If that wasn't clear, we've come down again. Failure to make that lower low, if it was the lower low, lower high for a lower low continuation. We've certainly failed to do that. And then definitely here, I am considering this price action a break of structure points to the left. So after a higher high, expecting that higher low for the higher high continuation. However, the only caveat to that is the fact that on the way down, of course, we have created a weekly order block. Hence why that, in my opinion, is why we're having a bit of a daily range. Price wants to, based on the strength of the DXY fundamentally, wants to potentially continue higher based on the overall bias in terms of longer term thought process. I believe the DXY also wants to move higher. However, the technicals then step in and suggest this is the part of the trading strategy, of course, order block selection. So this bearish engulfing weekly candle left us with a large weekly order block that prices, of course, as you can see, failing to break above. Hence now we're getting a hold up on the daily time frame as price is seeking to make its mind up. So it's then up to us to understand, well, if we're going to be looking to trade in that environment, what's going on in the lower time frame. So this is the range itself. Have we broken out to the lows, lower low, lower high, lower low continuation, potentially then respecting this order block, driving price lower? Perhaps that's a thought process. Or alternatively, do you just wait out to see if price is going to look to break the range to those highs, and potentially once we've broken those range to the highs, breaking this weekly order block as well, we can then look for those higher high, higher low continuations to bring price potentially further up to this weekly order block right there up at the highs, where I believe that's where the dollar wants to be, not down at these lows. The dollar wants to be somewhere higher towards the 104 mark. So based on that, that's my sort of DXY analysis, and then refining those areas down, looking for those pivot points, those turnaround points of interest in the market to potentially allow me to take a cross pair position. Now, the first thing I'm looking at the moment is Euro US dollar to see where has that gone. EU. For some reason, that has gone walkabout. Is this the pair? No, that's certainly not the one. Let's type it in. We can have a look. Okay, I found it. So Euro US dollar. So not just based on the technicals and the fundamentals on the DXY alone, that as a standalone is not a reason, in my opinion, to enter a cross pair position. It also needs to, of course, make sense on the pair that you're looking to speculate on. So I'm looking at Euro US dollar at the moment to try and understand whether or not, based on my thought process of potential DXY immediate long positions, let's say from this 15-minute order block based on 15-minute structure, perhaps we can get a reaction from that towards the upside. As we look at most recent price action, we've had that high, or not so much breaking immediate structures, but not breaking the most recent lower high that causes lower low. We only had that confirmation at this point. So in terms of most recent price action, we now have that higher high. Are we now coming back down for a higher low after retesting higher time frame points of interest for a directional short on the DXY? And now are we looking to potentially push slightly higher to, in my opinion, what would be a better point of interest right up at the highs of the range? So if we're looking to fulfill those highs on the range on the DXY, I'm anticipating DXY strength to come into the market, potentially from this area based on 15-minute price action. Then if you look to tie that in with Euro US dollar, where it's gone walkabouts again, this is certainly not the pair. Let me just type it in. Euro US dollar. FXCM is what I want. Cool. Euro US dollar. So if I'm expecting bullish potential price action from the 15-minute order block on the DXY, then perhaps I should be looking for that bullish pressure to potentially bring Euro US dollar to the downside. However, with that said, I don't have my entry criteria just yet. I have the setup confirmed based on structures on that 15-minute time frame, based on my higher time frame point of interest as well. You may have seen this morning I had this 4-hour order block slightly higher, but I've moved it down somewhat because it has been mitigated, and I want to see how price is going to react in and around this margin. And what I would like to do is trade this based on higher time frame directional bias. So that would have to start from a 4-hour order block, then looking to refine those areas down. Without that 4-hour order block in this region, then it would just be an Asia range type of position that I'd be looking to speculate the short on. So at the moment, what I can see on Euro US dollar, we've had this structure point in the market in terms of bullish pressure on that 15-minute time frame. If I zoom out for you, see a high was created here. If I bring that for an illustration very clearly, higher high, higher low, higher high. We've had this break of structure immediately to the left. Not good enough, in my opinion, to then take this as a short position. However, moving further on with price action, we've had this low in the market. This low absolutely breaking structure points that caused the most recent higher high. Therefore, here's the low in the market. After a low, what am I expecting? A lower high before what? A potential lower low continuation. Now, I need to make this make sense based on the 4-hour time frame as well. Previous 4-hour candle closed bullish Yes, it did. However, we are still remaining below this 4-hour 50 EMA. So I am expecting, based on my strategy, that this current 4-hour candle in the next 1 hour and 13 minutes has every potential to reject this 4-hour 50 EMA to the downside and provide me with a candle in line with what we have here. So that would make sense based on the 4-hour time frame. Of course, the bias could be absolutely wrong based on the fact that Euro US dollar has made a high here. We could well be in the realms of a higher low before a higher high continuation. So very conflicting biases coming out of the DXY alongside those cross pairs. However, that's trading in a nutshell. If you're not comfortable looking at this type of price action, then of course you do always have the option to sit out and wait for much clearer price action. But for me personally, once I find my entry criteria, this is a position that I will be looking to take. Not certainly from this order block, that's been mitigated. However, this order block up at the highs, we have tapped into it. We've had that bearish engulfing candle, at least a bearish candle coming from that area. So a potential entry for myself would be from here. However, what I'm failing to see at the moment is some structural breaks, at least on that 1 minute time frame. So if I bring the 1 minute time frame up for you, I can look to take this aggressively based on, if I draw it out so you can understand. Of course, here we've had that high, higher low, higher high. So the best structure point to be waiting for would be this. Wait for a break, pullback, order block short, or alternatively, if I'm looking to take that more aggressively, if I zoom in on that price action for you to see, and we can have it just like so. If you use this in more of a exaggerated method, what we could see is a high in the market was created here, higher low. We are expecting potential higher high. If we fail to get that, we have a low breaking this structure point. I'll then wait for price to come up for an aggressive short to then make sure I am break even by the time we get to this place in the market where we have every chance then, let's say, to potentially reject that towards the upside. So it's quite technical analysis at the moment, technical analysis I should say at the moment. So that's my focus currently on EU. No position just yet, just having a look to see how price is going to potentially break those structure points. I like the fact that we are bullish above the 4-hour 50 EMA. However, previous candle closed below it. So using that strategy, or my strategy there, to the fullest, with the expectation that that 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame should be rejecting to the downside. Of course, it is just a strategy. Price action can do what it wants, but I certainly do rely on my strategy every day. So that's what I'm looking at the moment. I mean, I can quickly whiz through a couple of pairs to see what else there is, but certainly at this time it is just EU that I'm fully concentrating on. To throw in the mixture, US dollar CAD. So this, for me, suggests that there could be room to the upside on the DXY. Why? Well, if I'm looking to short US dollar CAD, the way I look at this is, where would I be looking to take a position and how does that fit in with the DXY? I'm not looking to take any position on US dollar CAD at the moment. I'm looking for a short from the highs potentially, or along from this refined area. In my opinion, the US dollar CAD has every long-term potential to move to the downside. However, as an intraday perspective, I'm forecasting that the US dollar CAD can move up towards previous weekly highs, refine this 4-hour order block down, of which was created by way of bearish engulfing candle that took out many days of price action, left us with that order block behind, and we're just reaching back up again. So the way that I can look at that is, we were trending up towards the upside. We had that break of structure creating a low. As I've mentioned, potential clue after that low, maybe a lower high for a lower low continuation. Would that make sense? Where could we find price gravitating towards? We've got the weekly 50 MA, where previous weekly candle closed bearish below it. So we have every reason to believe price would look to gravitate towards that weekly 50 MA for the week. And then, of course, the 4-hour 50 MA would be the hurdle where price is currently respecting. Although we've had that first break, there is every potential after this low. We've got that lower high for the lower low continuation. And then the 4-hour 50 MA for me would be where I'd be looking to take a management. Now, alongside the management, would I be looking to take a position from there? Well, potentially, based on the fact that if this is not respected, and in fact we make a high from here, then pull back for the higher low, then absolutely I'd be looking to take a position either where price has made that high from, potentially in and around those areas, or the best case scenario, refined area, weekly, 4-hour 50 MA, as we've mentioned, that's pushing price towards the upside. It would make good sense to take a position from there. So in the here and now, what I'm using is trying to understand, well, if my short position on EU is soon to play out, I would expect US dollar CAD to move up towards these areas based on that DXY strength. If I don't see that DXY strength, and in fact it's DXY weakness, then of course US dollar CAD will be dragged slightly lower before then expecting DXY strength to come into the market to push price higher. And if I revert back to the DXY, do I have any other points of interest where I'd be looking at a potential turnaround on the DXY? Absolutely, down at these lows. So I completely understand. I may be incorrect that price is looking to push from this area, because there are far better areas down at the lows, i.e. here, 15-minute order block, where price pushed off to make what you could perceive as the first full leg extension on that high. So after that high, the higher low, all we've done is use the intricacies in terms of 15-minute price action to decipher this area here. So that's what I've got at the moment. Blimey, my phone is going absolutely bananas. But nevertheless, I hope that has been a good insight in terms of what I'm looking at the moment. So pretty much using US dollar CAD and the DXY as good confluence to tell me when Euro US dollar could potentially be ready for that short position. If I don't get those breaks of structure, then I won't be looking to take that trade. And in terms of US dollar CAD, and if US dollar CAD does indeed get up here with that bullish pressure, I'll be double checking the DXY to find out where the DXY is, understanding potentially by then the DXY could be there. I would absolutely be expecting DXY strength to come out of this area as a result of price simply respecting that range, and these are just wicks to the downside within that range on the daily time frame, which I can quite understand how we can look to manipulate that range, looking for a long from that daily 50 MA. As we can see to the bottom right, price is respecting it beautifully. So why would I not be expecting bullish pressure to come out from that area? So it's all aligning. As I've said, it's very technical analysis. And all I do say is, I'll always implore you to use DXY as your full degree of confluence. You may not trade the index, but why it's easier for me is because I've used my strategy to trade the index. So I know if I mark my chart up to the same degree that I would mark my charts that I'm actually speculating on, I can simply just use it as a confluence for turnaround points on that DXY. So it's as simple on the DXY exactly. So it's as simple as that, to be quite honest. So as I said, I hope that's insightful. I hope that helps. And I won't go through any other pairs because EU is pretty much my favorite at the moment as we speak. While we're there, look at a correlating pair by way of GU. So GU again, GU suggests to me that, let's have a look while we're here. Would I be looking to take a short position at the moment on the GU? Well, we have a session high, which I'd be interested in at the moment. Have we had a move away on that session high? Yes, we have. Has that move broken structure? We can need to look to the left first and foremost to decipher that. Not really. If we had this here like so, and then we had this structural break like that, then of course coming back up to those session highs, I'd be interested in a position after some entry criteria standard of meeting. Nevertheless, we don't have that clearly. If I zoom out, you can see we haven't fully had a break of structure. Therefore, in order for me to take my best looking GU sell position, it's up at these highs just here at the moment. So that's already suggesting to me also that EU may not be ready. But of course, it depends based on the strength of the pound. Conversely, against the euro, we'll just have to wait and see. But at the moment, GU not a position for me at this time. But certainly, if price starts to move higher, potentially what we'll see on EU is price also move higher, and then as opposing to looking to trade EU from the middle of nowhere with no 15-minute order block, what I'll be then looking to do is transfer my bias over to GU for a potential short position. So that's how the cookie crumbles. As a professional trader, you've got to be adaptive. You've got to understand you can't take all your favored positions of the day. and just understand what is looking best based on technicals, based on price action, based on where the DXY is as well, and then use all of that to your advantage, and then take a managed risk position, if I can get my words out. Still fairly early for me. Nevertheless, team, thank you very much for your time, patience. We do appreciate it. Support across all the channels. It's appreciated, as I said. Do take care. All the very best. Charles.